For over a century, the global car industry followed a predictable script. If you thought about cars, you thought about a few places: Germany, Japan, the United States. From these countries came the brands that defined modern driving. Companies like Toyota, Volkswagen, Ford, BMW. These weren't just manufacturers. They were symbols of national pride, engines of economic growth, proof of industrial power. For decades, they set the rules. But something has changed. And it didn't take decades. It happened in just a few years. Profits are falling. Factories are shutting down. Entire regions that once belonged to these legacy car makers are slipping away. And behind all of it, one name keeps appearing: BYD. A company that not too long ago, most people outside China had never even heard of. To understand what's happening, you have to start with the scale of the disruption. This isn't a small shift. It's not a temporary downturn. It's something deeper. Some of the most established car brands in the world are struggling in ways that would have been unthinkable just a decade ago. Profit margins shrinking, layoffs increasing, market share disappearing. And it's not happening in one place. It's happening everywhere. Europe, Asia, Latin America. Markets that used to be strongholds are now battlegrounds. And in many of them, the same pattern keeps repeating. A new competitor enters, and within months, everything starts to change. To understand how we got here, we need to go back, not to Detroit or Stuttgart, but to Shenzhen. In the mid-1990s, a young engineer named Wang Chuanfu started a small company making rechargeable batteries. That's it. No cars, no factories, no global ambition. At least not at first. But what he did have was a very specific belief. He believed that the future of cars wouldn't be defined by engines. It would be defined by batteries. At the time, that idea didn't seem particularly revolutionary. But what he did next did. In 2003, Wang made a move that confused almost everyone around him. He bought a failing car factory. Investors didn't understand it, analysts criticized it, the media dismissed it. After all, what does a battery company know about building cars? But Wang wasn't trying to compete with existing car makers on their terms. He was doing something different. While the rest of the industry was trying to adapt cars to new technology, he was building cars around something he already understood deeply: batteries. And that difference would eventually change everything. Over the next decade, BYD didn't just grow. It built a system. One of its most important decisions was something most companies avoid. It chose to depend on almost no one. Instead of outsourcing key components, BYD began producing nearly everything in-house: batteries, semiconductors, motors, electronics, software. It was slower, more expensive at first, but it gave them something their competitors didn't have: control. So when global supply chains started breaking down, when chip shortages slowed production across the industry, BYD kept going. While others paused, they accelerated. At the same time, BYD made another decision that didn't get much attention. Instead of focusing only on fully electric vehicles, they invested heavily in hybrids. Cars that could run on electricity for short distances, but switch to fuel when needed. In places like California, that seemed like a compromise. But in much of the world, it made perfect sense. Charging infrastructure was limited. Long-distance travel still depended on fuel. BYD wasn't building for ideal conditions. They were building for reality. And that gave them access to millions of customers their competitors weren't reaching. Then came a turning point. BYD developed a new type of battery, simpler, safer, and cheaper to produce. It didn't rely on expensive materials. It reduced the risk of overheating. And most importantly, it lowered the cost of building electric cars. This wasn't just a technical improvement, it was a strategic one. Because in the end, the biggest barrier to electric vehicles isn't technology, it's price. And BYD had just found a way to bring that price down. What followed was rapid expansion, but not in the way most people expected. BYD didn't focus only on wealthy markets. It moved into regions that were often overlooked: Southeast Asia, Latin America, parts of Europe. Places where demand was growing, but competition was less prepared. In Thailand, their presence grew almost overnight. In Brazil, they took over a market that had been left behind by others. In Europe, their share has been rising steadily, challenging brands that once seemed untouchable. And with each new market, the same pattern emerged: lower prices, reliable supply, aggressive expansion. But there's another layer to this story, one that doesn't always get as much attention. Because BYD isn't operating in isolation. It's part of something larger, a broader industrial strategy shaped by the China government. Over the years, companies like BYD have benefited from financial support, policy incentives, long-term planning. This doesn't mean success was guaranteed, but it does mean the playing field wasn't entirely equal. While Western companies focused on quarterly results, BYD was building for decades. This creates a challenge for traditional automakers, because competing with BYD isn't just about building better cars. It's about competing with an entire system. A system that can absorb losses longer, scale production faster, adapt more quickly to market changes. And that makes it difficult to respond. Cutting costs isn't enough. Improving design isn't enough. Because the advantage isn't just in the product, it's in how the product is built and supported. But this story isn't one-sided, because rapid growth often comes with hidden pressures. Some analysts have raised concerns about debt levels, financial transparency, sales practices. There have been reports suggesting that not all sales reflect real demand. Questions about how inventory is managed, and concerns about how quickly the company is expanding. At the same time, there have been recalls, quality complaints, labor issues in certain regions. None of this necessarily means the system will fail, but it does suggest that the story is more complex than it first appears. This creates an interesting tension. On one hand, BYD is growing rapidly. On the other, there are signs that maintaining that growth may not be easy. Because scaling globally isn't just about production. It's about sustainability, financially, operationally, structurally. And as competition increases, even within China, that pressure will only grow. But focusing only on BYD misses the larger shift. Because what's happening here isn't limited to one company. It's part of a broader transformation, a shift in where industrial power is located. For decades, the center of that power was clear. Now it's becoming more distributed, more competitive, more unpredictable. Cities like Shenzhen and Hangzhou are becoming as important as Detroit or Tokyo. And that changes the dynamics of global competition. So, what happens next? There are a few possibilities. BYD could continue to grow and become one of the defining companies of this era. Or it could face the challenges that come with rapid expansion: financial strain, market saturation, rising competition. But in many ways, that's not the most important question. Because even if BYD slows down, the system behind it doesn't. What this story really shows is that the rules have changed. Success is no longer just about innovation, or branding, or even scale alone. It's about integration, strategy, long-term positioning, and the ability to operate within larger economic frameworks. Companies that understand this will adapt. Those that don't may struggle. For a long time, the global car industry felt stable, predictable, dominated by a few familiar names. But that stability is fading. And in its place, something more complex is emerging. Not a complete replacement, but a shift, one that is still unfolding. Whether BYD becomes the defining car company of the 21st century, or just one part of a much larger transformation, one thing is already clear. The future of the industry is no longer being written in just one part of the world. And this time, the outcome is far less predictable.